Chapter 26. The Final Stop. I recognized the attack posture of the venomous snake, arching its body and then suddenly thrusting its head forward to sink its fangs into its prey. My neck and face were fully exposed to its strike. There was nowhere to escape and no time to block. As I braced for impact, expecting the worst, a sudden snap of white light flashed, and the black valley was lit up as if covered in snow. The snake, already lunging at my neck, was startled by the bright light and slipped off my shoulder. It all happened within a second. Without waiting for the snake to land, I swung the entrenching shovel in my hand, smashing the snake's head flat, dark inky venom oozing from its crushed skull. I rapidly stepped back, quietly uttering words of relief. The snake's venom was undoubtedly lethal. If I had been bitten, the poison would have spread throughout my entire bloodstream, leaving no chance of survival. Looking around, I realized that the life-saving white light had come from the flash of Shirley Yang's camera. She was always close to her camera, taking pictures wherever she went, and it turned out that it was the flash from her camera that saved my life. I owed her quick reflexes a debt of gratitude, for without her action, Old Hu would have been meeting Allah by now. But there was no time for thanks, not when there could be more of those strange snakes in the valley. We had to move past the mountain pass before tending to other matters. With a wave of my hand, I urged everyone to hurry. The camels, sensing the absence of snakes ahead, calmed down from their distressed state. Chu Jian, Sudi Peng, and others loaded the unconscious Yi Yisin, Professor Chen, and the body of Halai Guo onto the camels' backs. Anlaman, whistling, led the convoy forward, and we all, illuminated by the cold flares and flashlights, hastened out of the dark groves of Zaglama. We continued until we passed through the mountain pass into an open space, and finally stopped. There, we laid Halaigua's body onto the ground. The sky was still dark, without a hint of starlight or moonlight. It's always darkest before dawn. Halaigua's body still showed the terror of his final moments. His lifeless eyes, obscured behind his glasses, remained open, and his body, tinged green, appeared all the more eerie and tragic under the beam of our flashlights. Revived by the cold wind gusting from the mountain pass, Professor Chen regained consciousness, and with a struggle, he flung himself onto the body of Halaigua, weeping inconsolably. I lifted the professor up, hoping to console him with reminders that the dead cannot be brought back to life. But words of comfort failed to reach my lips. I had been with Halaigua for nearly a month, fondly teasing him as old antique, and enjoying his straightforward, forthright nature. Now, thinking of his demise brought an unbidden sourness to my heart, making it impossible to console others. Tears marked the faces of our companions as well, when suddenly, a dark red slit cracked the far horizon. The sun was about to rise. We all looked east involuntarily. The light slowly shifted to rose and then to blood red before finally turning into myriad rays of gold. The sun's arc emerged, and at that moment, the boundless sea of sand appeared transformed into melted gold from the Almighty's crucible. Amidst this golden molten desert emerged a massive city before us, with countless ruins, various buildings made of brick, wood, and stone, an abundance of towers and battlements, the most prominent being a black stone steeple that had slanted over time, standing quietly amidst the city. It matched perfectly with the scene in the black and white photograph Shirley Yang held. After 2,000 years, the remains of Jingjue, indeed, still existed in the deepest heart of the desert. The scale of Jingjue City could have supported a population of 50 to 60,000 people. Famous cities like Lulan, in their heyday, had only housed 10 or 20,000 inhabitants and an army of over 3,000. The city was mostly ruined, buried for a millennium in the sand. It was hard to distinguish some parts, whether they were sand dunes or fortifications, and most towers had collapsed and eroded. Despite this destruction, one could still imagine its past splendor and magnificence. Here, there was a vast magnetic field, making it challenging for airplanes and other tools to approach from above. Located deep within the desert, it's probable very few had been able to find this place. It's unknown how many explorers and lost souls have visited this legendary city before us, but one thing is certain: 99% of them would never return to their homeland. Professor Chin, shaken and trembling, lifted the body of Hal Aigua from the ground, pointing towards Jingjue with a hoarse voice. Look, you always wanted to see this mysterious ancient city. Open your eyes and see. We've finally found it. Concerned that the old man's grief had clouded his judgment, I quickly pulled Professor Chin away from Hal Aigua's side. Professor, teacher Hao has passed. Let him rest in peace. Sadly, he did not live to see this miraculously preserved ancient city, but his wish rests on you to fulfill. Please, you must gather yourself. Shirley Yang and several students came to offer their consolation. Feeling guilty about earlier bringing up money, I expressed my gratitude to Shirley Yang. For the life-saving grace you've given earlier, I won't say thanks. It's like owing you my life. But business is business. Now that we have arrived at Jingjue, according to our previous agreement, that's 20,000 American dollars. Fatty, overhearing the talk of money, eagerly chimed in, 20,000 per person, making it 40,000 in total, cash settlement. Shirley Yang gave us a sideways glance and bit her lip, saying, Don't worry, you'll get every penny once we get back. I knew bringing up money at that moment wasn't quite appropriate. My mind was a mess, and without thinking, I had spoken out of turn. It was better to change the subject quickly, but finding the right words was challenging. I stammered for a bit, then said, The city. It's quite large. Shirley Yang looked at me intently and said, After spending these days together, I see that both of you possess outstanding skills and uncommon experiences. It's rather surprising that you're only interested in money. It seemed my first impression of you wasn't wrong. Let me advise you, there's more to life than money. Left speechless, Fatty jumped in. Miss Yang, you live under the stars and stripes of the United States. Your father is a Wall Street mogul. You've likely never needed food coupons or experienced rationing during shortages, so you can't understand the environment we've had to survive in, nor are you qualified to lecture us on our values. Moreover, your constant talk of life is misplaced. Poor people don't have the luxury of living, they merely survive. I can't hold back my words today. If you don't like hearing it, consider them unsaid. Now that we've found Jingjue, just tell us what to do next. Fatty began speaking boldly, but halfway through, he remembered Shirley Yang was essentially the boss funding the expedition. Worried about antagonizing her and possibly not getting paid, he quickly changed his tune, humbling himself like an employee. I addressed Shirley Yang, expressing my regrets about Teacher Hao's demise. I did all I could for Teacher Hao.
I'm sorry.
Shirley Yang acknowledged my words with a nod, seeming to dismiss Fatty's blunder. She then pulled out a water bottle to quench Professor Chin's and Yi Sin's thirst. The professor, having been visibly shaken by Hal Aigua's death, began to regain his composure after some water. After a short team discussion, we resolved to bury Hao inside the desert at the mountain pass. His whole life had been devoted to studying the culture of the western regions, so resting here with the ancient mysterious city he was so passionate about seemed fitting. A companionship he surely would have wished for. We dug deep into the sandy soil, wrapped his body in a blanket, and buried him there in the desert. I marked his grave with an upside-down entrenching tool, leaving it as a monument for Hal Aigua. The remaining 8 of us stood solemnly for a moment of silence at his grave before departing. The dead were behind us, and we still had the living to save. We needed to enter the city and find a water source urgently, lest Yi Sin, deeply afflicted by dehydration, be the next to succumb to the desert's embrace. Thus, we prepared to head into the city with haste. Arriving at our final stop, we all harbored hopes that no further misfortune would befall us. An unexpected event now would render any monetary gains moot. How can one spend what they have if they're not alive to enjoy it? As everyone appeared ready, I turned to Shirley Yang. Shall we get going? On the verge of embarking, Shirley Yang jittered slightly from either fear, tension, or perhaps excitement. Then she withdrew a cross and uttered a low prayer. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. After her prayer, she calmly said to us, "Let's go."